caused by silicon fault. Network Rail now telling us that's expected until around 10 o'clock, that disruption. It's been a good morning though for the tube so far. Just minor delays just flagging up now on the district line between Earls Court and Plaistow. Bill Sheldrake, BBC Radio London Travel. Next update just before 9 o'clock.
This is London.
Now yours is a Thames side query, isn't it?
We ran over Tower Bridge at one point, and I think I saw about 15 of us all kind of just freeze to the spot because the wind was pushing us back.
Well, we're back in Wapping again, aren't we? This is where Pawning took us.
Oh, my day is complete. The referee's taking a tumble. Now her grain falls on.
You talk about Blackheath, but you say the tea hut is the same as it's always been.
The way that I first discovered London was at the top of a number 6 bus.
This is BBC Radio London.
And we've been discussing the local elections. They took place outside London, of course, not inside the capital. But one of the surprise hits of the night, the Lib Dems. I mean, they're surging phoenix-like from the ashes. Nobody quite imagined, I don't think even they did in their wildest dreams, they'd perform as well as this. And we're joined by Tom Brake, the Lib Dem MP for Carshalton. Hi, Tom. Good morning. Congratulations, I'd better say, hadn't I?
Yes, you had. Thank you, Vanessa. No, it's been a really good night for us.
Tell us why and tell us how and tell us what. What's happened? It's been good.
Well, first of all, we have retained the councils that we controlled, but we have also made significant gains in places sort of east, west, north, south. So Chelmsford, for instance, North Devon, gaining controls of councils. And I'm confident that this will be the best result for at least 15 years, if not significantly longer than that.
We thought, I think many people thought, that the game was up for the Lib Dems. It had almost reached the point where sometimes in covering political events, they didn't get mentioned at all. They didn't sort of feature. They weren't factored in. So what has been the USP that's brought you through in this way?
Well, I guess there's been a huge amount of dissatisfaction with the performance of the two major parties. I don't think Conservative and Labour Party, I don't think anyone could argue the government is being well run at the moment. But equally, I think many people believe that the position that Labour have adopted in relation to Brexit, the single biggest issue the country faces, people are left very confused about what their position is. So I think that has benefited us. But we've also got very hard-working councillors who represent the party very effectively and their constituents who've campaigned on local issues. So it's a combination of those factors.
And of course, Lib Dems ardently against Brexiting, absolutely pivotal and unequivocal, very, very clearly setting that out perpetually. Has that been the strength, or does this denote a kind of a disenchantment with Brexit? Do you think that people are coming round to the idea that Europe's the place to stay?
Well, clearly it denotes a dissatisfaction with the way things have been managed, but I suspect that these results, to some extent, also reflect the fact that there has been a shift. I think all polls confirm that there's been a shift now in favour of Remain. And these results point to the very simple fact that if people want to stop Brexit, there is one party that has the activists, the potential to win elections and fight to stop Brexit. That is very much the Liberal Democrats.
Well, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Tom Brake there, the celebratory Lib Dem MP for Carshalton. Now, what we're asking this morning is the question being asked on the front page of the Times today. The headline is, middle class are seen as sinners, says schools chief. Being middle class is now seen as a sin rather than a virtue, the head of a private schools group said yesterday. Barnaby Lennon, the former headmaster of Harrow School, criticised the way in which parents were judged harshly for paying for their children's education when they would not be for buying a big house or car. He also attacked left-wing commentators, many privately educated, as hypocrites and virtual signallers, taking offence on purpose as a cost-free way of gaining superiority over those who don't agree with their one beautiful idea, which is the dependence of children and citizens on the state. Let's talk to Mungo in Penge. Hello, Mungo. Good morning.
Hello, Vanessa. You all right, darling?
Yeah, I'm all right, sweetheart. Tell me about your life and your mum and dad.
Well, me and my brother went to Whitgift in South Croydon. We were paid public school, but my parents didn't really have the money, so it was a break in their back kind of situation.
Right.
I was listening to the woman before who was sort of criticising, saying, all these people, no one who doesn't have the money goes to public school.
Yes.
But it's not true. I mean, there were quite a lot of people who were on bursary and scholarship and whose parents literally all their income went on school.
Well, I remember it because I
really-
remember my dad sometimes going to pay the fees with sort of cash that had been sort of accruing in an envelope for months and months, that kind of thing, and also people whose parents would come in on the day or pay in dribs and drabs. Lots of people with local shops round the corner, that kind of thing. Not big businessmen and big moguls with loads of cash. It wasn't like that, not at all.
And no, it wasn't something that people spoke about. Obviously, there were people at Whitgift who had huge amounts of money, but the people who didn't have the money, it just wasn't a conversation that was had. But there were people there who were on scholarship, people who were on bursaries, and my brother ended up doing very well. He went to Loughborough, which is an elite university, but he studied hard. He did really well, and he lives in China now, and he's an engineer. So, but it's this misconception that you got to meet people to do well in your life. That might be true for some people, but I don't agree that that's the norm at all public schools.
And what did you make of Dr. Mackenzie, that sociologist, saying middle-class people who pay school fees are gaming life? I mean, that's her favourite verb. She used it so many times. Do you, I mean, I didn't totally understand. I think she means
it didn't make any sense.
Stacking the odds in favour of their kids, doesn't she? She means trying to buy them life, to buy them a better life.
I promise you, the kids who I went to school with, they were incredibly smart, and yes, some of them had tutoring, but some of them had just studied. Some of them went home. Like my best mate went home and they worked hard, and as a result, they did very well.
Yes.
But that's because they wanted to. I didn't go to university. It's not a decision. That's not something I was. It's a decision I made. But because I'm not very academic. But I mean, my parents wanted the best for me because the schools in our area at the time. I'm 25 now, and in Penge we had, awful schools in the area, and there were like local stabbings, and my parents were like, well, we don't want that opportunity for my son, so we'd rather spend the money and send him to a much better school, which is ultimately what happened. And I mean, it wasn't necessarily the best thing for me, because I'm not very academic, but I got in. I did tutoring before and got in, but again, they didn't have money. They spent all their money on us getting tutoring.
And have they gamed your life? Have you got posh friends, posh connections, somewhere fabulous to stay in every capital city in the world? Are you going to people's delightful stately homes for the weekend? Is that what you're doing? I assume you are.
I've got friends with money, but I left and I went to Richmond College. But I've also got friends who come from very humble backgrounds and normal backgrounds, where, because the elite isn't normal. That's what I figured out when I was at Whitgift. The elite isn't. It's a small percentage of people.
But did you want to be part of it? Did you think it's not normal?
No.
You didn't fancy it? Why not? Why didn't you fancy it?
I'm a Penge boy. I'm sort of stuck to my roots. I see myself as socially middle class, but I am working class. I mean, I work in TV. Right. I'm very junior in TV, and I don't earn the biggest wage compared to some of my friends who do, and I don't care that much.
Are you only in TV because your parents were labouring so hard to send you to a private school that you saw the potential, you had extra confidence, they bought you that edge that made you think, right, I can get a job in TV? Was that it? Is that what they got you? No.
I enjoy TV. I went into TV because I love TV.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, really. But my brother went into engineering because this is something he wanted to do. We had facilities at Whitgift that other state schools probably didn't have.
Yes.
And we were very lucky. We were very blessed to have that opportunity. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity. But there are parents out there who spend all of their money on their children because they want the best for their children. Their children gain out of it. And that doesn't make their children become elitist. Their children are very normal, very humble, but they work hard. They probably work even harder than they would have if they went anywhere else, because they know how much money their parents spent, how much of their parents' money was spent on their education.
Lovely talking to you, Mungo, really. Best compliments to your parents. Let's go to Alex Proud, restaurateur and columnist. Hello, Alex. Good morning to you. How are you?
Not too bad, Vanessa. Good morning.
Good morning. So you've got Barnaby Lennon, front page of the Times, saying it's now considered to be a sin to be middle class. And we did have this sociologist on just before, I don't know if you heard her, talking about middle class parents gaming life, that they're buying favourable odds for their kids.
Well, I mean, I hate to point out, we live in a capitalist society. We're all out to game life. We're all out there to do the best for our parents. It's pre-programmed into every animal in the world. You do the best by your children. That is our genetic makeup. It's absurd to try and say that you're going to do anything different. Everyone does that. Middle class, upper class, lower class. The dog down the street will do that for its puppies. Come on, let's all grow up and be sensible about it. I mean, Britain's big problem right now, and I would say a big part of why Brexit's occurred, is that slightly boring, majorly middle-class country that existed in the 70s has disappeared. The middle class in Britain has been slaughtered for the last 10 years as a super wealthy elite have stolen all the good bits, and middle Britain has been ripped apart. And that ripping apart of the middle of Britain is why we've got so much extremism now. Because guess what? Middle-class people were quite nice. They had moderate views. They believed in a ladder where everyone climbed up that ladder. That's all gone. The ladder's in bits. If you're not on the ladder, you don't have a property, then you ain't getting a property. You know, if you weren't past that lucky 5% that bought a few red buy-to-let flats back in the 90s, you're stuffed. And the problem is, that's what Britain's problem is, and that's why we've got Brexit, and that's why we've got extremist politics, is because we've become a nation of haves and have-nots, and the whole middle chunk, whereby working class people slowly climbed up the ladder, is gone. There's no ladder left. There's no middle class left that can do all the nice things it used to do, and you're either very rich or you're not very rich, and I think that's really why we are where we're at now.
Well, thank you very much. You summed that up nice and briefly for us, Alex. You did me proud, Alex Proud. Alex Proud there. You may disagree with every word he uttered. You may agree. You may think, God, he's someone who talks a lot of sense. And he does it nice and briefly in words we can all understand, concisely, clearly. Alex Proud there. Do you agree with him? The headline story today, middle classes are seen as sinners, says Schools Chief. The number 0800 731 2000. If you pay for your child's education, do you reserve the right to do that? Does it mean you're middle class? Does it mean you're loaded? You're one of the super rich? Are you working your guts off to do it? Do you feel it's the right thing to do and everybody would if they could? Or do you think it should all be stopped immediately so nobody can at all? An equal playing field. Maybe think the playing field is never equal. Doesn't matter whether you've got money or haven't got money. Some are cleverer, some are prettier, some are taller, some are nicer, some are more attractive. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. 0800 731 2000. We will be straight back with you after the news, the travel and the weather at 9 o'clock.
BBC Radio London, and for Holborn we still have Kingsway closed off southbound from the A40 High Holborn to the Strand underpass. This is due to an accident which happened outside Holborn Tube Station. I can see the police officers on the cameras, in fact, directing traffic at that junction, and the whole of that stretch from Chancery Lane to Holborn Tube Station is crawling along, and 14 bus routes remain on diversion. M25, the clockwise stretch at junction 31 from Lakeside, we did have an abandoned vehicle. It looks like the recovery truck is now towed it away, so that's looking much better. However, we now have delays for Northolt. This is Church Road in both directions between the White Hart roundabout and the Target roundabout, ongoing works, and that congestion right back now to the Willow Tree roundabout. And this just in from TfL Rail, there are severe delays for their trains heading out from Liverpool Street to Shenfield because of a broken down train at Chadwell Heath. We still have delays for the trains as well between Gatwick Airport and East Croydon on the London-bound line, and that's been caused by a signalling fault. For the tubes, just minor delays on the District line between Earls Court and Plaistow because of a faulty train earlier at Westminster. Bill Sheldrake, BBC Radio London Travel. Next update at 9:30.
On digital radio, 94.9 FM and on BBC Sounds.
This is London.
This is BBC Radio London.
London's News at 9, I'm Matthew Schofield. Labour and the Conservatives have faced a Brexit backlash after smaller parties and independents won local council seats across England. There were no elections in London yesterday, but elsewhere both main parties have admitted they had a tough night, with the Labour vote down in the north and the Tories losing control of several councils in the south, including Chelmsford, Basildon and Southend. Well, the BBC's Norman Smith in Westminster says the Tories have lost more than 400 seats. Not even half the results are in yet.
Already we've seen prominent Brexiteers citing these grim Tory results as further evidence for Mrs May to quit. Priti Patel saying overnight that Mrs May is the problem, Sir Bernard Jenkins saying it's time to move on, and I think we will see these elections used as a launchpad to try and force Mrs May to go. They are hemorrhaging support in their traditional strongholds, and the reason, I think bluntly, is Brexit.
Well, so far the Liberal Democrats are the big winners. They've gained more than 300 seats and won control of 9 councils. Meanwhile, a councillor in Southwark who quit the Labour Party this week says Jeremy Corbyn isn't up to the task of being Prime Minister. James Caldwell will now sit as an independent after resigning over Labour's Brexit position and accusations of anti-Semitism. The party says it's fully committed to supporting the Jewish community and it has a sensible alternative to bring the country together. But Councillor Caldwell says it'll struggle in London in the European elections later this month because it's not an anti-Brexit party.
I wasn't going to be able to campaign for the Labour Party in the European elections because it is not an anti-Brexit party, but I would have struggled to campaign for the Labour Party in a general election later in the year as well, because Jeremy Corbyn is not well suited to being Prime Minister. I don't personally think that he is up to the task.
In other news, scientists say an end to the HIV pandemic could be in sight after they found effective treatment can prevent sexual transmission of the virus. Researchers tested nearly 1,000 gay male couples across Europe, one HIV positive and taking antiretroviral drugs, the other HIV negative, and found no cases of transmission over 8 years. The study was led by Professor Alison Roger from University College London.
The study results are completely conclusive that if you're HIV positive and you're on suppressive treatment, then you're sexually non-infectious. And this very much supports the message of the U=U campaign, which is a big campaign that's now global. And essentially it means that if you're undetectable, it's untransmittable. That's where the U=U comes from, and our study results very much support that.
India's most powerful storm for 5 years, Cyclone Foni, has made landfall with winds of more than 120 miles an hour. At least 2 people have been killed and 1 million have been evacuated from their homes in the eastern state of Orissa, where there are reports of villages being submerged by a dangerous storm surge. Here, the Treasury has decided not to get rid of the 1p and 2p coins following a consultation on the current mix of coins and banknotes. Cash use has fallen dramatically in recent years, but the Treasury says more than 2 million people still rely on it, particularly elderly and vulnerable people. The London-born actor who played Chewbacca in the Star Wars films has died at the age of 74.
You can understand that thing?
And that thing can understand you too, so watch it. Come on out of there.
Peter Mayhew, who was 7'3" and grew up in Barnes, appeared in 5 Star Wars films, including the original trilogy, but never spoke a word. He was working shifts as a nursing assistant when he was first cast in 1977. Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, says he was the gentlest of giants, a big man with an even bigger heart.
What was so remarkable about him was his spirit and his kindness and his gentleness was so close to what a Wookiee is. He just radiated happiness and warmth. He was always up for a laugh, and we hit it off immediately and stayed friends for over 40 years.
In sport, Arsenal and Chelsea both have the advantage after the first leg of their Europa League semi-finals. The Gunners came from behind to win 3-1 at home to Valencia, while Chelsea drew 1-1 in Frankfurt. Now, Elizabeth Rizzini has London's weather.
Thank you, Matthew. It'll be feeling colder today. Lots of cloud around through the morning. Some brighter spells towards the south. And there'll be some showers pushing in from the north as we head through the afternoon in particular, some of which could turn out to be heavy and even thundery. Some brighter spells in between. Top temperatures today of only 12 to 14 degrees Celsius. Then through this evening and overnight, the showers will move their way southwards and the skies will clear. In the north, we could possibly see a touch of frost into tomorrow morning. Colder over the bank holiday weekend with a chilly northerly wind.
BBC Radio London, it's 6 minutes past 9.
On digital radio
94.9 FM
and on BBC Sounds.
This is London.
This is BBC Radio London.
Vanessa Feltz.
Lovely listener, we're talking about the middle classes. We're particularly talking about the decision to pay for your child's private education. Barnaby Lennon, front page of the Times today. He's the former head of Harrow, Sir Winston Churchill's school, Eton and Harrow, the country's most prominent, most, I suppose you might say, aspirational public schools. And he was a former head of Harrow. And he says parents are being judged severely for paying for their children's private education. It's primarily middle-class parents who pay. I would argue it's not only middle-class parents who pay by any means, but nevertheless, primarily middle-class parents who pay, and people are judging them and finding them wanting. And we did have a quite, you're allowed to judge it for yourself, but I felt a fairly adamant and pretty trenchant sociologist on the programme, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, saying middle-class parents are gaming life. Gaming, G-A-M-I-N-G, gaming life, by which she meant, I think, trying to play the system with money. You pay for a good education for your child because you think it's better than a state education. At the same time, you think you're paying for social connections, I suppose a certain kind of accent maybe, or a certain kind of aspiration, or exposure to classical music or opera or different kinds of sports or literature. I don't know what you think you're getting. And then that kid goes to a primary university and then nabs the best job, the best consort, the best car, the best house, the best of everything, and that's what you bought your kid. And I wonder what you think about that. Let's go to James in Waterloo. Hello, James. Good morning to you.
Yes, Vanessa. How are you, darling?
I'm all right. We've spoken before, haven't we?
I know. I'm still waiting for you to grace me with a present.
The only thing is, I'm northwest London. I'm not Waterloo, am I? So it's a question of making a special trip. Maybe it's worth it. I should probably come specially, shouldn't I, for a cup of your coffee?
Well, especially now I've got gelato and sorbet here as well.
Oh, have you? My God, you're branching out. Well, now you said that.
Slowly.
Now you said that. When the sun comes out, I'll certainly think about it. So tell me about the middle classes and what you think about that. Is it a sin to be middle class these days?
Not at all, Vanessa. I think, to be honest, a few weeks back we had that Extinction Rebellion protest on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony of it is a majority of them was like middle. I don't know, even if you say, I say posh. I don't know what. I don't really like to say class or whatever is class.
Yeah.
I just mean well-spoken, clearly not from London. And it was the reason I rang in because it prompted a memory. I thought to myself, you know what? The other day, one of the girls who come.
Yeah.
She's a white girl with dreadlocks, yeah?
Yes.
Remember I said to you about Caribbean background I've got and stuff like that?
Yes,
so that looks a bit odd. Me seeing that, it looks a bit mad.
Uh-huh.
One of my uncles used to have dreadlocks. It's not a thing, but I associate that more with people from the Caribbean and not a style sort of choice.
Yes.
Anyway, cut a long story short, the girl's like, oh yeah, what do you think of this sort of thing? What's going on? And I said, I was doing some upselling, and I was saying, yeah, listen, any protesters get a 10% discount in it. Got to make the most of the opportunity.
Business opportunity,
anyway,
absolutely.
Cut a long story short, she said to me, I said, I suppose that, there's meaning behind what you're doing, innit? But to be honest, if I was going to be campaigning for anything, it'd be inequality and capitalism. So she went, oh, what do you mean by that? I went, because nowadays it seems like there's no middle ground no more. As in like, if you work hard, you're going to get somewhere in life. As I said to you before, I've got a whole mix of people walk past me day in, day out.
Yes.
But sometimes, I see these young sort of foreign exchange students talking about, like, what apartment they was given a choice to have.
Right.
One in Vauxhall and one in Elephant. And there's me scratching my head thinking, I live just off the Old Kent Road.
Yeah.
Me sitting there thinking to myself, there's no way on earth I'm ever going to really be able to buy a flat in London, a house in London. Anyway, so this girl, she's come out with, oh, what do you mean inequality? I went, well, just working class people. She went, oh yeah, you're obviously lower class, aren't you? She went, and just sort of stumbled on her words. I went, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. I said, listen, I am lower class, darling, probably to you, innit I? You get me? Obviously, I am probably lower class. No doubt about it. You sound like you've got an Oxford education, you know what I mean? So yet you're choosing to waste your time doing what you're doing rather than working, but nonetheless you've probably got a house to fall back on, like what you're going to inherit or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's definitely a class judgment thing.
But let's imagine though, James. Let's just tell everybody the coffee van, where it is, what it's called, where to look out for you. That's the first thing. Let's get that out.
All right. First and foremost, St John's Church, Waterloo, sandwiched between St John's Church and King's College.
Right.
I'm 6'2", light skin. I say I've got a pretty distinct voice. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Off the back of the last calling, I had a few people come on there and go, oh, you're the fellow off the radar.
Exactly. You have got a distinct voice.
Remember, it's a trio between me, my dad and my brother, and we've got gelato and sorbet serving now as well.
Let's imagine that the good Lord smiles upon you, and let's imagine that the word gets out, your gelato is fabulous, your coffee's amazing, and you're doing incredibly well. We have a long hot summer, or it's a cold summer, people like a nice hot coffee, or it's a hot summer, people want an iced coffee, whatever it is, and you're doing well and business booms, it really booms. So you, your dad and your brother, you invest in a few more vans and a few more vans, and before we know it, there's a franchise, you know, you're up there with Costa, you're up there with Nero, you're doing, let's imagine it, you're doing incredibly well, and you really are raking in the dosh, you are making money, you know, you really are. And then let's imagine that you're making so much of it that, for example, you can afford a flat in Vauxhall with a mortgage, obviously, but you can make the payment. You can put up the deposit. You can do it. You have some kids, a whole battalion of them. Yeah. Do you not want to conserve for them whatever it is that you, your dad and your brother, through absolute sheer graft in horrible weather and getting up early, have managed to achieve? And do you then do that by sending them to private school? You can afford the fees by this point. Do you spend money on that? Do you think that's a worthwhile thing to do?
Well, do you know what? Again, Vanessa, see what I think it is. If you talk to a lot of like normal people, I mean, people work on building sites. Yeah. People are on 500 quid a week wages. The irony of it being, it seems to be we're the most generous. Do you know? I done the Oxford and Cambridge boat race, recently, and I was on Putney Bridge, and imagine it, I was really sort of anticipating a good weekend there, thinking, yes, I'm going to make bundles of dough. Yeah. One of the women, she walked over to me with a Protect Philippe Nautilus on with all diamonds around it. Went, oh my God, your prices are so expensive.
And how much were you charging?
No, listen, the price is the base price of £3 a cup, but you've got a 64 grand watch on your wrist, darling.
I know, but how do you know how she got the 64 grand to buy the watch? Maybe she's never had a cup of expensive coffee in her life. You can't make these judgments. How do you know? I know,
but making the assumption she lives in Putney and she's got that sort of aristocratic tone.
But other people, though, are always very keen to spend everybody else's money. Everyone's always telling everyone else what they think they can afford. Oh, he ought to be able to afford it.
No. You know? Listen, you know, I think, listen, that the irony of it being, Vanessa, anything I get, I share. You know, we was brought up in poverty, man, so, you know, if there's 4 kids, there's only enough money for 2 kebabs. We're sharing them 2 kebabs, so it's a fundamental factor which I think is embedded in a lot of poor people. So, you know, that's why, but I think, listen, talking about private schooling and all that. Of course, if I made money, I would love to send my nephew to private school. You would. Of course, man. And I would make sure he's grounded and not judged and sort of made to sort of be proud of.
And when you said to that posh woman, the protester, the white woman with the dreadlocks, when you said to her, you know, I don't know what you're sort of protesting about, but really it's about equality, you said, and it's about capitalism. You're not saying, are you, that you want capitalism to end, because you are a capitalist and you're hoping to be a very successful capitalist. You're a businessman, you're an entrepreneur. That's what you do.
If I'm honest, my long-term goal, Vanessa, is to help unemployed, like people, single mothers, you know, girls who can't sort of muster up the brain to sort of get a CV together. Yes. Boys who can't muster up the brain, and it's a can-do attitude, you know, which nowadays seems to have just sort of disappeared into thin air, where it don't matter if you can do it anymore. You just got to present a CV. Everything's got to be in a formal way now. Yes. It's gone. The days of the past. You know, people with like enthusiasm, it just become a disappearing entity in life now. Do you know what I mean? It's because we live in a world now where if you've got something on paper, it's far more. It's got far more oomph to it than it has if you can.
But I don't know if that's really true. I don't know if still enthusiasm, oomph, a bit of, you know, pizzazz, some va-va-voom, a bit of sort of. You know, a bit of extra really still does count, because you can have a million printed off CVs that all look exactly the same. When you meet the person, they've got something to bring to the party. Isn't that what really counts? I hope so at any rate. James, lots of luck to you, lots of love to you. I do hope to come and visit you soon, and love to your dad, your brother and everybody else concerned. That's our wonderful caller, James in Waterloo. I'm a big fan of his, as you can tell. What we will do now is we will take a trail and we'll be straight back with this conversation.
This is London.
And there's something about having all the lights off in the studio not only makes me look younger, it makes the guests feel, well, it's a false sense of security.
Joe Good.
They tell me things probably in the dark that they wouldn't tell me with the lights up.
Weekday afternoons from 1:30.
The callers are the best bit of the show. They're the best bit of the radio station, if you really think about it. They add the bones to the skeleton.
Joe Good. Weekday afternoons from 1:30. This is BBC Radio London.
described as middle class an insult these days? Barnaby Lennon's the former head teacher of Harrow School. He's one of our regular paper reviewers on the programme, actually. And he says being middle class is now seen as a sin rather than a virtue. Dr. Lisa Mackenzie was on the programme before. She said, and I quote, middle class parents are gaming the system. G-A-M for mother, I-N-G, gaming the system.
People are realising now that social mobility has actually stopped, and that paying for your children's education is actually gaming the system. We live in a society and in a system where that you can actually game it. So if you pay for your child's education, your child are more likely to go to one of the better universities, and then at that place you can get cultural and social capital. You can mix with other people who are of the same class.
Freelance columnist Alex Proud says there's no ladder left for the middle classes.
See, we're all out for game life. We're all out there to do the best for our parents. Middle-class people were quite nice. They had moderate views. They believed in a ladder where everyone climbed up that ladder. That's all gone. The ladders and bits. That's what Britain's problem is, because we've become a nation of haves and have-nots, and the whole middle chunk, whereby working class people slowly climbed up the ladder, is gone. There's no ladder left. There's no middle class left, and you're either very rich or you're not very rich.
So we're taking your calls on this. Obviously, massive generalisations being made across the board. Middle classes are all very nice. They're not very nice. They do this, they do that. Obviously, they're not all one person. They don't all behave in the same way. But let me read you this, for example. And it says, please don't read my name out. My husband and I are both from working class backgrounds, but made the decision to send our 3 children to private secondary schools because we could afford to. We don't see it as gaming anything. We can just see that the facilities are nicer, classes are smaller, and trips and opportunities are wider. Who wouldn't want to offer that to their own children? Obviously, I see life isn't fair. I know that. I went to the most horrendous comp in East London. Interesting one, isn't it? And here's another one from Debbie who says, who is that woman you're talking to? What is she on? I'm working class. I've been a nurse for 39 years. I've worked full-time all my career and taken on extra agency work in order to educate my kids privately. My husband always worked overtime for exactly the same purpose. She is simply wrong, assuming that working class parents don't want to or cannot provide for their children. Let's go to Anjali in Enfield. Hello there, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So tell me about paying school fees for your children, because you are doing it.
Yes, it's just, well, I listen to you a lot, but I'm usually driving, so it's the first time I've called in.
Yes.
I'm working class, and I sort of make sacrifices to send my son and pay for his pre-prep education.
Yes.
But the point I wanted to make is, for me, and I'm sure for lots of other people, it was nothing about gaming the system. And I don't even think sort of you could say that if you paid for your child's school, that you would sort of end up with, you know, all these great things like a massive house, doing well, great friends, this amazing life.
Yeah.
The reason I sent my son was, one, it was sort of safety.
Right.
I live in Enfield, North London, and there is a lot of problem with gangs, stabbings, violence. And the first thing was, I want to send my child to school to be safe.
Yeah. I mean, we honestly we had our paper review this week with the deputy editor of the Daily Express, Michael Booker, I think is his name, and he lives in Enfield, and he talked about the area, and he talked about, you know, what encountering gangs and a big altercation just as he was walking to Tesco about 6 o'clock in the evening only the other day. So we know what you're talking about. You thought it was the safer option more than anything else.
Well, yeah, I grew up here, but it has changed a lot. But even I've got a cousin who lives in Cheshire, which is further out towards Hertfordshire than me, and even their school, I think, might get metal detectors because of the amount of children bringing in knives and the amount of problems they're having. So that was my main reason. The second reason was the facilities and the help he would have in school. Is in, I want him to have, not to sort of be left behind, not to sort of be left out. And he had slight speech problems. And the local school that we were offered in the borough had 45 children to a class, could offer no sort of one-on-one help other than through the sort of council system, which we waited on for 2 years and sort of didn't get anything. And then you're offered 6 30-minute sessions. So the other thing was the facilities and the help he would get. He now works, he's in a class with 15 children. There's 3 teachers to that class. He gets generally one-on-one help on a regular basis.
Right.
So it was nothing to do with mixing with the top people. It was more just about my son getting the education that he deserves and really every child should get. And I wouldn't even criticise, the local schools, because there's good teachers everywhere. But just, you couldn't compare, like, the facilities and the help he would get to any of the local schools. And it wasn't sort of an easy thing to pay for, because you've got his whole school in ahead. And, it wasn't an easy decision, but that is how I felt. It's such a difference to the local schools. And it's worth the money just for those reasons, really, safety, and so he gets the education he deserves.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Nothing sort of about mixing with the top people or, having a massive car. It was just about that. I don't want him to be bullied. I want him to enjoy school and make the most out of it. Love every minute
Is it
of
an
it.
enormous amount of money you're having to shell out for this? Because after all, I think people will say it ought to be his human right to be safe on the way to school, on the way back, and at school. The idea that you will have to pay an enormous amount of money and work incredibly hard to be able to afford to pay just to keep him safe is horrifying.
Well, people's situations are different, but I'm on my own with my son, and I actually stopped working full time to help look after my father. So the fees to me are, in a way, all children should be able to go to school like that and not have to pay those type of fees, because they all deserve it.
Yeah.
But it is expensive and it is a struggle to pay it. But I don't think I would go elsewhere, to be honest, especially with the slight speech problems he had and the sort of no help he would get. And that's just not for him, that's for hundreds of children that have sort of problems. But to me, they don't get the help they deserve and they need in the local school. So that's why parents go, not because they want this sort of amazing lifestyle.
Thank you for
It's just
phoning.
that
I
they
mean,
want a good education.
it's with a dose, a really, really big dose and dollop of reality that you've phoned there, Anjali. I hope you'll ring us again. First time caller there. Why does she send her son to private school? She's working class. It's incredibly expensive. It's not because she wants to game his life. She wants to save his life. That's why. She wants to keep him safe. You heard what she had to say. Let's talk to Cece in Bushy. Hello, Cece. Nice to talk to you again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hiya.
Hi. Yes. I really think any parent, if they're given the choice that do you want a better education, better university later on, better job, all in all a better life for your children, would any parent care about their children would say no. No, of course not. But education, I think any parent would want the best for their own children. And education or private education, they pay with their own money. They work hard for it. It is a very personal choice, to be honest. If they believe that this choice would potentially lead more successful or better life, and then they do that choice for their children. So I think it's very personal, and it is like I buy food it's like buying food for your children. They are very expensive range of organic products out there. If you want to live in such lifestyle, then obviously it's very, very expensive and you pay a lot more. And then on the other extent, and you can choose normal food, but that is down to individual households' choice, isn't it? So really, I think it's really unfair to talk about choosing private is gaming something, because I think fundamentally is how can people play in the system is because the system is maybe not good enough, because we're talking about the comparison of state school and private school in a lot of cases. Yes. I'm not saying there's no good state school out there. Of course they are. I'm just saying in a lot of cases, state school is not providing good enough education for a lot of people, or they're not quite satisfying with it, or simply they're not able to. I remember when my child, she's 5, she's in the private school, but actually when we chose her school 2 years ago, we live in a good area, I think, very safe, very nice. We have like 2 outstanding state primary schools. We think we're close enough. We're like 800 meters to one and 1 kilometers to another one. However, we stand absolutely no chance because their recruit area is like literally 205 meters for the last couple of years. So even we just live down the road, we can't get in. And the state school we could get in, you could see people smoking out there. You heard a lot of behaving issues. If you have a choice, you just simply would not want to send your children
So
there.
what are you going to do? What have you done?
So, fortunately enough, me and my husband work very hard. We are able to send her to a private school. So we still went through the whole state school system to see if we can get into, even though we knew we stand really, really low chance. So the result came back. She didn't get into any outstanding state school around us. Yeah. We knew that would happen. Unfortunately enough, we signed her up for a private school near us as well. So she is now in the private school.
Does she have to take an exam to get into the private school?
They do have a sort of assessment. I think she is signing up to go join the school at reception.
Yeah, she's only little, right.
When she was 3, so basically the year ahead, they had a sort of a called assessment morning. Yeah. But I didn't feel particularly stressful about it because it seems like a selective system on it, but the children went there, there's a lot of toys, a lot of books, the teacher took her in. She was really happy. When she came out, she was given a snack, like a cookie. So she said, I did ask her what happened. She said, I did some drawings, I read some books, with the teacher, I played tea party, and I came out. So she seemed quite stress-free throughout. And fortunately, we got the offer afterwards.
So if I said to you, you are gaming her life, you are just buying her what you consider to be a better life, it's deeply unfair, and there'll be lots of people who despise you and detest you for doing it. They think you shouldn't be doing it at all.
I think you should. Right, but I think I don't really mind if it's a state or private, as long as I feel like it's safe, nurturing, and a good environment to be able to give her the opportunity she deserves to. Yeah. So if I got an offer, we eventually got into one of our outstanding state primary school, me and my husband will be equally happy. But assessing the situation is unless we move, and I have to warn you, a house is near that state school is very, very expensive. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people. So see, that is another gaming thing, isn't it? Even the state school system. If you want your child to be very, very close enough within their catchment area, usually the property price is probably 20 or 30% higher, and that is another financial gaming we're talking about, isn't it?
Cece, I've got to stop you, my love, but thank you so much. Thanks for ringing. Thanks for your honesty. Thanks for explaining why you're paying school fees. We're taking calls on this. Do you judge people who pay private school fees? Do you think what they're trying to do is just take an unfair world and use it to their advantage, or do you think you'd do exactly the same if you had the choice? Or do you think they're deluded? They think they're buying something better for their kids. They're not really. 0800 731 2000. We will be straight back with you after the news headlines.
Good morning. It looks like voters have vented their anger at the Brexit deadlock after Labour and the Conservatives both suffered losses in the local council elections outside London. With fewer than half the results in, the Liberal Democrats, Greens and Independents have already gained more than 500 seats at the expense of the two main parties. The Tories have lost control of 16 councils and Labour 3, while the Lib Dems have won control of 9. Researchers believe they've proved that people receiving effective treatment for HIV can't pass it on through sex with their partner. Their study, published in the medical journal The Lancet, looked at nearly 1,000 gay male couples across Europe. No HIV transmission was detected over 8 years. Ahead of Ramadan, Scotland Yard is urging Londoners not to be deterred from attending places of worship following the mass shootings at 2 mosques in New Zealand and the Easter Sunday suicide bombings in Sri Lanka. The Met says since those attacks, officers have visited a number of faith venues to provide security advice. Another report on Crossrail out this morning says unnecessary cost has been created because of how the project's been managed. The National Audit Office has highlighted several factors which contributed to the spiralling budget of the delayed scheme to build a new railway across London. It's 2 years late and around £3 billion over budget. London's weather, some bright spells around, but plenty of cloud today with some heavy showers. and feeling cooler with top temperatures of 14 Celsius, 57 Fahrenheit. Now with the BBC Radio London travel, Bill Sheldrake.
Thanks, Matthew. Better news now for Holborn. They have now reopened Kingsway after the earlier accident which happened just outside Holborn Tube Station. However, it's still looking pretty busy, heavy and slow, really, along High Holborn from Chancery Lane Tube through to Holborn Tube Station. Here comes Stratford with an accident. It's the A11 Leytonstone Road. That's been closed off in both directions between Maryland Station and Chobham Road. It's been closed off on the Leytonstone side of Maryland Station. Norfolk still seeing delays along the A312 Church Road in both directions between the White Hart roundabout and the Target roundabout. Ongoing works along that stretch. And for the trains, we still have disruption between Gatwick Airport and East Croydon because of a signalling fault expected until 10 o'clock. That disruption affecting the London-bound line, of course. That's affecting Southern, Thameslink and Gatwick Express services. For the tubes, just minor delays on the Circle Line anti-clockwise because of a faulty train. Bill Sheldrake, BBC Radio London Travel. Next update just before 10 o'clock.
On digital radio
94.9 FM
and on BBC Sounds.
This is London.
This is BBC Radio London.
Vanessa Feltz.
This is from A. Hi, A. And Streatham, who says, anecdotes from your callers are great, but please do not allow your callers to suggest that it's a given that state school children don't get sent help, will be bullied, won't be safe. Outrageous. I don't think anyone thinks it's a given. I think some people are concerned about it depending on area. My child could have gone to private school. We could afford it. We opted not to. We also want the best for our child. How insulting and totally blinkered. He'll see your kid at uni, says A in Streatham. This is about Alex Proud. It's from Anne in Bethnal Green. Alex Proud, the most sense of this horrible predicament we're in at the moment in this country. I am one of the middle-class statistics that he spoke about. My husband and I worked hard and bought and sold our houses until we were finally seen as middle class. We did very well in the 80s and 90s, sending my 2 children to private school to give them the best start. Divorced in 2000, came back down the housing ladder, which took me back to working class. Got made redundant and live off savings because I can't claim from the system that I paid my whole 43-year working life into because I've been able to save. I can't get my pension yet because the government has changed the goalpost twice. I've got a roof over my head just, but my savings are diminishing very fast. So Vanessa, what comes after working class? Hell of a good question. Don't know the answer. Let's go to David in Edgware. Hi David, morning.
Good morning.
And you're a first-time caller. Welcome to the show. Nice to hear from you. What's your take on this conversation?
Well, if we're talking about a meritocracy, I mean, there was a book a few years ago called The Rise of the Meritocracy.
Yeah.
And in that book it described, would we really want a meritocracy in the first place? Because there are people at the top.
Yes.
If we got rid of all the inequalities, the people at the top would be the cream, because by definition they've risen to the top on merit alone, not by social class or any social contact advantage they might have had or anything else.
Yes.
And at least we have some of the people at the top who are slightly insecure about their position because they realise that perhaps some of the advantage that they have in life is due to good fortune of birth, and perhaps inherited wealth, etc., etc. The best way to be, to have a nice life in this country is to be born rich, or to have a trust fund or whatever.
Yes.
That's the best way, because as people have said, the ladder, the middle class, is diminishing because, in the end, there is only a certain number of middle-class jobs. People have to compete for them. So whatever advantage you can get, nobody should blame people for gaming the system, because that's what they're doing. But I hear caller after caller, middle-class caller, outraged at the suggestion that they're gaming the system. Nobody blames them for gaming the system, because what's the alternative? If you don't have a middle-class occupation, you're going to live on, going to be working in McDonald's on a minimum wage job.
Well, the alternative, I suppose, is to commit. Well, the alternative is to commit to the state system, isn't it? And to pour your time and energy and maybe money as well, if you've got it, into your local state school. So theoretically, standards rise and resources increase, and all your friends also send their children to that school, and then generally the atmosphere in the school changes and all this kind of stuff. That's the theory, that instead of diverting and kind of sidelining into the private school system. You don't. You pour your considerable aptitude, intelligence, and whatever else you've got into the state system. That's the idea, isn't it? That's the theory. That's why people dislike the idea of gaming the system by paying private school fees.
Given that people see the state schools chronically underfunded, that parents are having to pay for the most basic things, we shouldn't forget there are millions of children that go to school without a proper meal in their stomachs because of benefit cuts. And
I don't think we are forgetting that. We just happen to be talking about something else. It's not we've forgotten that other issues exist.
But it all links in because really, they're almost, the middle classes are almost like climate deniers. Yeah, the facts are all around them, but they choose to see it through a blinkered perspective.
Well, what do they not see?
Well, the fact is, I just want them to be honest and say, yes, I will buy my children the most advantage I can get because the alternatives are terrible. You'll work in some minimum wage job. You will have a hard life.
But it's far from inevitable that if you go to a state school, you're going to work in a minimum wage job and have a hard life. That's not a given. Constantly we do programs about people who didn't go to university at all, didn't get any O-levels, didn't get, went to the secondary modern and arrived with half a GCSE, and they've done incredibly well in all sorts of ways. And let's state for the record that we don't believe that doing well just means making a lot of money either. There are lots of people who are having a terrific life and great quality of life and pleasurable relationships and everything else, and they haven't got a brass farthing. It's not always about money, is it?
Education, in its purest sense, is a. For me, I learned for my own pleasure. I always have done. I had a thirst for knowledge as a child. Eventually, I went to university. I have 2 degrees. I'm from a very poor family.
Yeah.
I went to very poor state schools. I did most of my education as an adult.
Yeah.
I became a graduate, got a professional job. So I'm one of the people that came off the council estate. I live in Leafy St Albans now, but whereas I've never forgot where I started, I had no advantages in life. And there was a little bit at that time, going back a few years, there was a ladder of opportunity. That ladder has now been pulled away. The middle classes, they're able to buy advantage.
I think we've lost David. So let's talk to Remy in Croydon. Let's say thank you to David and talk to Remy and said, hi Remy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Vanessa.
Oh, nice to hear from you. How are you?
I'm good. I've phoned up about this issue of private school before, and I was just really picking up on what Cece was saying. I think the state system is unfair. I think there's a lot of really good state schools, but it's incredibly difficult to get into them. You've literally got to live on top of most of them, and the house prices around them are at a premium. We have 2 outstanding primary schools 3 miles away from us. We've got absolutely no chance of getting into them. Mm-hmm. The alternative is 2 schools near me. One requires improvement, and the other one is only just opened.
Right.
But I'd love to save myself £1,000 a month in school fees if I could.
Right.
But I don't. There's not many alternatives, and that's what I think is really unfair. Because we'd all like to send our child to a good school. And I agree with you that if you can send and you invest and everything else, but the reality is that you haven't really got time. You want something good right away for your child. You want them to have the best advantages right away. And the vast majority of parents that are at my child's school all struggle to meet the school fees.
And what do you think you're getting at the school that you wouldn't have got had you sent your child to the school that is room for improvement, for example? Because room for improvement means you can improve, doesn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, but I don't want... if I'm honest with you, I don't want my child to be part of the experiment. I want them to go to good straight away.
Right.
I want to have all the
and is it good? Are you paying for something good? What are you getting that's good?
I'm getting a very happy child.
Oh, that's nice.
He absolutely loves this school.
Yeah.
I get a really nurturing environment, small classes, lots of opportunity in terms of sport, extracurricular activities. Academically, difficult to say at 6, but the main thing is he's really happy there. The children are really lovely. So I think he's getting lots of advantages, but the biggest advantage is he's nurtured and he's happy.
You don't think the same would have happened maybe at the new school? It would have been brand new. Everyone would have been so excited that it was new. The teachers might have been lovely.
At school, I knew it wasn't right for him.
How could you tell?
Straight away, he's my child. I know what's right for him. I know when I walk into a school, what's going to work for him. And I think most parents do. When you walk into school, you kind of know straight away.
And what did you feel or pick up on that you felt wasn't right?
I knew straight away that, I'll be honest with you, the playground was tiny. So you've got a tiny playground in the midst of a very concrete kind of, lots of houses around it, quite small, concrete. My child's a boisterous boy.
Right.
He wants fields. He wants, he wants fresh air. He wants to be able to run around. And that really impressed me about the school that he goes to. And as soon as I walked in the school, I thought it was a really nurturing environment. It just had that sense.
And you're paying a lot of money for this, Remy, but it will be a drop in the ocean in comparison with secondary private fees, which are absolutely extortionate. What is it, like 30 grand or something ridiculous?
Yeah, a lot of money.
Or 25, it's a hell of a lot of money. Will you be able to continue to shell out when he gets past 11, and will you think of doing that? So expensive.
Depends. I will have to see what he's like at 11.
Right.
Let's see. Because I think that, the thing is, people say, you can send your child to a grammar school. It doesn't really work like that.
Well, only if they get in. Depends if they get in, doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so competitive.
I don't know where I'm going to be when he's 11. We don't know where we're going to live. We don't know what, all those things to be thought about.
Right.
But, ultimately, I will do my level best. I work extremely hard. I do have a good career, and that's one of my motivators.
And finally, the sociologist we spoke to talked about gaming life and gaming the system. Is that what you feel you're doing, gaming it? And if so, are you kind of embarrassed about it, or are you fine about it? How do you feel?
Absolutely not. I am the council estate kid. Yeah. I am that council estate kid. Yeah. Absolutely not. I went to a state school. I went to a very good state school. But if I had a daughter the same age now, living where I live, I've got absolutely no chance of sending her to that state school. It's a state school that only has, takes 60 children in each year.
Yeah.
It's in Fulham. You've got to live on top of it. When I went to that school, we had children from all over London going to it. You've got no chance now. And that put me in advantage. I went to a very good university. It put me at an advantage, but I was the council estate kid. But you bet your bottom dollar I'm going to do everything for my child to, in the words of I don't like the term, gaming, going to do it. That's what I think most parents would.
Good call. Lovely talking to you. Thank you very much. Let's go to Lucy, who's on the line in Guildford. Lucy, you went to private school yourself, but you work in a state school. What do you see as the differences and when you compare the two?
Well, I mean, personally, I really feel that my parents wasted their money giving me a private education.
Why?
Because, I certainly am not. I'm not what I would consider to be middle class now with with the money that I earn and the lifestyle that I live. And, I feel that the children, I'm horrified to hear about people talking about their children feeling nurtured in private education and they wouldn't get that in the state system. I feel that I work in two incredibly nurturing state schools. I don't feel that I was particularly nurtured in most of them. I mean, I went to various private schools. So my last one, my sixth form college, was amazing. But prior to that, I didn't feel nurtured. I was bullied. I felt isolated. And, I really feel that we give a top-class education, and I mean a rounded education. So not just an academic education, but an emotional literacy education. And the children get to see people from all different backgrounds, and I think that that's incredibly valid. And I also kind of resent this idea that people are doing the best for their children by, sending them to private school, as though the rest of us that aren't doing that aren't doing the best by our children. I have nothing against choice, but I think it needs to be recognised that we're talking about the elite here, and even with scholarships, we're talking about maybe 20, 30%. For a lot of us, that is just not a reality. And it is a two-tier education system,
and I think it's wrong, and I think it's wrong the idea that people have about state school, that it is not okay, that they're not nurtured, that they're not educated.
And I mean, in fact, I think often the opposite is the case. And actually, I speak from personal experience of this. I really, unfortunately, know what I'm talking about this one, which is often some private schools are very much examination factories. And the whole idea of pastoral care, empathy, looking at the whole picture and all that kind of stuff is completely sidelined as they focus on exam results. And in fact, in state schools, the system is much better set up to nurture, to understand, to empathise, to help, have a proper bullying protocol and all that kind of thing. And in private schools, you very often don't get that. The idea that they are more caring and more sort of empathetic places, I think is grossly misleading in many cases. What do you think?
I think you're right, but I think it is about balance. I mean, like I said, I went to one private school that was incredibly nurturing and caring, but I went to others that weren't at all. And I think, and I think the same is true of the state school. My children happen to go to a school that is quite exam focused, and I've now decided that I want my son to go to a different state school, and I was lucky enough, because it's selective, that he got into it. Not, by the way, on academic. It's not selective academically.
Oh, how did they select then?
He's got into the Brit School, which is
he must be talented, very talented.
Yes, thank you. But it is the that makes me sad, because it's the only state performing arts school, performing creative stuff in the whole of the south of England. But he was lucky enough to get in, and I think there could be more of that in state education, more creativity and more balance if people stopped. The people that have what I would call the fight and are interested in their children stopped immediately thinking state education was bad and we shouldn't get involved, and that to do the best we need to send our children to private educated schools. And I've got plenty of friends who send their children to private schools where there are the same problems that people are talking about here, so bullying, mental health, drugs, and all of those things. And I think we need to have a balance and an understanding that just because you pay for something, it's not necessarily better. And again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with a lot of these schools, but I think it's the attitude that if you don't send your child to that school, that you're somehow doing them wrong. And
let me ask you something. Congratulations on his getting a place at the Brit School, which is amazing and shows that he's obviously very talented. Are you worried, therefore, that it's almost inevitable that he'll want a career in show business, which has to be the hardest, absolutely without question, the hardest possible thing to make a living at, to do well at? I mean, it's the odds are so stacked, even against the most talented person. There's only one Adele, there's one Bruno Mars, there's one Ed Sheeran, and all of that kind of stuff. Does it worry you? Do you think, oh, damn it, this is great but terrible at the same time?
I know what you're saying. I personally feel I just want my son to be happy. He's quite an unusual child, and he's a member of the LGBTQ community, and I want him to feel happy and settled, and I want him to achieve what he wants to achieve. And if he comes out of there and says, this is not what I want to do, I want to do something else, that's absolutely fine by me. And from talking to other people whose children have had that experience, a lot of them go backstage, as it were, and end up in production and all kinds of things. And I think the field is bigger than people think it is. I don't think you necessarily have to be in front of the camera, as it were, or whatever. And I think there's lots of people in the creative industry who, that we don't see, like your producers and people like that. So
you should. They're lovely. I wish you could see them. In fact, you can't see any of us. It's the radio. We're all gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous, and so young and slim. All of us young, slim, and absolutely radiant. We really are. So it's a damn shame you can't see us. Listen, it's lovely talking to you, Lucy. Thank you so much for the conversation. What's happening today? Oh, Jason's in for Robert today. So we'll have a chat with Jason. That will be just after this trail.
This is London.
I mean, it's diverse, it's creative.
To be able to bring my flavors into London, it's unbelievable.
When I'm in Greece, I feel like I'm Mediterranean. When I'm here, I feel like part of the London vibe, which is international anyway.
So Sonny and I, proud Brits and Londoners, fly that flag wherever we go.
Every celebration under every culture, and that to me is London.
This is BBC Radio London.
And Jason Solomons is here. Nice to see you.
Morning, Vanessa.
Morning. I always ask him about films and what we should be seeing, and if there's anything much that we ought to see. Is there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best time.
No, it's not, is
everyone's
it?
going to see this Marvel Endgame.
Oh, my other half saw it.
Right.
3 hours long. He adored.
he loved it.
I think he might. I think off the record he's seen it twice.
think
Don't
he's
tell
gonna go
anyone.
again.
Seen it twice. I think
He's
he's
already
already.
sat there 6
He's seen
hours.
it twice.
I think,
6
where have
hours.
you
Didn't
been?
do a wee the entire time. No, I didn't ask him about that. I'm not his mother. I don't need to know that. But I mean, he said it was magnificent.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you think so?
Well, it's not my sort of thing.
But did
know
you
what I mean?
manage to enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, I marvel at them. I kind of go, oh my god, I can't believe they've got how they do it. I mean, I'm impressed technically how
But
they
you can't
do it.
lose yourself in the
there
story.
aren't people in it.
I know.
There's
That's
not you and
my-
I in
it's
it. I
not
don't feel
my
danger.
thing, is it? I couldn't see it for anything. You'd have to pay me to see it, and even then, I wouldn't want to see it.
They did pay me to see it.
Yeah, you were paid. I don't get paid to see these. I wouldn't want to do it. Tell me what else, though. What other alternatives have we got?
There's a Zac Efron playing Ted Bundy.
Oh yes, it's had some terrible reviews.
Do you get this sort of fascination
with real crime? No, I think it's a bit weird.
Isn't
I think
it?
you have to look
Because
at
it's a-
yourself and
it's a-
wonder why you like it.
It's a massive thing though on podcasts.
And on
now
Netflix, it keeps flashing up the Madeleine McCann thing. I'd hate to watch that.
Well, Netflix
I don't
has a
want
whole
to watch
genre
that
of
at
this.
all.
I know.
But having said that, I did watch the R. Kelly thing.
Right.
I'm not quite sure why.
Well, but
once you've watched it, do you need to go and have a
well,
bath?
There's the
I don't know what
Harvey
it's all
Weinstein
about.
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's getting their own documentary
I
now. I feel
know.
a bit disappointed I haven't got one.
Oh, don't, Jace. You don't want one like that.
No, not about that.
Don't upset
Mine
your
would be all
mother.
nice and full of
No.
bluebirds and whistling.
But what about in the cinema? Is there anything that you have seen that you can mildly endorse, or not really?
I wouldn't say that's a massive. I wouldn't all flock to that. I love the mid-90s about the skateboarding kids in LA. I liked. There's Natalie Portman singing in Vox
Yes. What
Lux.
about that? That looks a bit weird.
Do you know what you know? I don't know if you ever reviewed films for the Jewish Chronicle, but
I'm
if
sure
they
I-
had
yes,
one
I think I
star,
might have
2-star, Meshuggah.
Is this one just crazy?
Meshuggah. Out the
Okay.
way. Starts brilliantly. The
Okay.
first 20 minutes is amazing,
Yeah.
and then Natalie Portman's not a great singer.
And in fact, when you read the reviews, you can't quite understand them either.
I know,
'cause it's
no,
so
it's very divisive.
Yeah,
yeah.
and
It's
the
not.
answer
It's
is no
rubbish.
one understands
Yeah.
it's rubbish.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't do that, and we'll spend our money on something else if we have
Exactly.
any.
There's not
That's
much
what
to
we'll
see.
do. Tell me what's
Spend
coming
150
up.
quid to go and see Fleabag.
Oh
at the
yes,
theatre.
and it's you can't get in.
Well, because it's 150 quid.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but she's sold out completely
Yeah, which she
from
knew she
top
would,
to toe
yeah.
and ceiling to stern.
Yeah.
I mean, people really do think she's something. And do you think she might rescue the new James Bond film by rewriting it better?
She might put some jokes in there, but whether Daniel Craig can deliver them, I don't know.
Is he a joke?
No, he's
deliverer?
not a joke
he's
machine. He's
serious,
no
isn't
Bernard
he?
Manning, is he?
That's what we want. Bernard Manning in a James Bond. Now you've got it. So tell me what's coming up on Rubbish Show
Well,
today.
Friday's all the F's, isn't it? So it's food with Nigel Barden, it's Funky Friday, it's a fourfer on the theme of beach and seaside. So I'm off to the seaside this
Southend,
weekend.
of course.
I'm off to Bognor.
Are you? Well, you know what George said about.
Exactly.
I don't know if we can say that on
My
the
wife
radio.
certainly said
Yes.
the same thing.
Why are you going there?
But there's a Butlins there, and my children are in a football tournament, and we have to stay in Bognor Butlins.
You'll probably have a marvellous time.
Do you know what? They'll have a marvellous time. So
I bet
therefore,
I bet you end up having a terrific time.
I do.
Anyway.
They've built this fantastic, the largest pool in Europe. It's got them,
tremendous.
and it's architecturally amazing.
You're gonna love
I
it.
don't like getting undressed.
Architecturally amazing.
I don't like
in
getting
Bognor, do me a
undressed. I
favour.
don't like getting
Yeah.
wet. So all of these things are.
But it's going
nothing
to be
me.
cold. You won't have to get
Well, it's
undressed.
indoors.
Oh no, really?
Even worse.
Oh yeah.
Wave machines.
Veruca City. You're going to love that.
Veruca City.
Marvellous. So you're talking about the
children's wee.
seaside. It
Talking about
always
the
used to be
seaside.
Southend for us. It didn't.
Yes.
It's only an hour
So
away.
that's what I want
Could
those
practically
memories.
park on the beach.
And people just go and they get a thermos flask. They sit in
Kurzel.
the car. The Kurzel.
The Kurzel, Rossi's.
Cliffs Pavilion.
Excellent fish and chips. I mean,
That's
what's
I'm a
wrong?
fish
What's
and chip.
not
You're a
to
fish
like?
and chips.
Of course.
Yeah,
What's
of
not
course.
to love about
But people
Southend?
go Bournemouth. And my grandparents used to ship
More
to
of a
Bournemouth,
schlep.
but it was far.
It was far.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and we once took my grandma Babs there, and my dad said, Mum, having a nice time? And she said, Ach, Norman, take away the trees, and what have you got? That was Bournemouth. So, yeah, but if you get a bit more upmarket, you do Westcliff, right?
Westcliff
Yes,
now. Now you're
Westcliff
talking.
is nice.
Yes.
I mean, we love the seaside. Yeah.
There's something about London that I think is intrinsically umbilically
Yeah, a
linked to
nice
the seaside.
local seaside.
Yes, we
is
don't
good.
want to. I'm not shacking to Whitby and all of this sort of stuff.
not that.
So I'm looking for your four tracks on that. I've got Danad. Danad was an art movement from the 60s with Peter Blake. That's where he started. They've
Sgt.
unearthed
Pepper
a
cover. That's all I really know about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he also used to put pop art everywhere, and it was breaking out all over. It was the hottest thing in 60s London was this Danad design. And no one found. They've hidden it away. They've just discovered it all in a treasure trove
Oh, how
in a big
wonderful.
house. And Mark Daniels, whose dad was part of the movement, it seems to be the custodian of all.
Oh, how great!
An
That's an
extraordinary
interesting one.
exhibition that's
Great.
now at Paul Smith's Gallery in Mayfair. We're going to hear about that. It's literally sort of hot off the press. They've just found all this art from Britain in the 50s and 60s.
Well, it sounds like a great show. Jason, nice to see
Vanessa,
you. Thank
lovely.
you very
Have a great
much
weekend.
indeed. Let's go to Ian in Harefield. Hello, Ian. Do you feel insulted if someone calls you middle class, or do you think it's a badge of honour?
It's a badge of honour. I'm middle class and proud of it.
Yeah.
The silly thing is class is purely an attitude of mind, in my opinion. My brother got a scholarship and went to Latimer. As I've already told you in the past, all the girls in my family went to HABS, the same school you went to.
Yeah.
Me, I failed the 11 plus and I went to Copeland in Wembley. Now, Copeland at the time was an extremely good school and it created artisans. Now, and I became an electrician and so really you would, I suppose, call me working class, but I'm not. I don't have a working class attitude of mind. Is there a working class attitude of mind? I don't know. I think it's where you put yourself. I didn't pay for my children to go to school. I definitely paid for them to go to university.
Would you have paid school fees if you could have, or did you decide not to, though you could have done? You would have done if you could have.
No. We actually got them both of them into an extremely good state school, local state school.
Yeah.
So primary school, I don't really think it would give you any benefit. As one of your correspondents said, don't write off state schools. There are some very, very good ones. And my two were lucky enough to get into a very good local state school. But if they hadn't have done, we would have found the money and we wouldn't have had all the lovely holidays that we had with them. We would have found the money to send them to a private school. The only thing is, where I live, that would have been very expensive.
All right, Ian, thank you. It's lovely to hear from you. Hope you're doing well in terms of health, and it's nice to hear from you. Thanks, everybody, joining the programme today. Thanks to the team, Gemma producing, we had Lissy and Ross on the phones, Ola driving the desk. And as you hear, Jason's coming up with a terrific show. Hope you have a lovely bank holiday weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday morning. Lots of love.
Good morning, BBC Radio London, and the latest travel news. The M25, we have a bit of a queue through the Homestyle Tunnel clockwise. There was an accident just after junction 25 where the highways officers held the traffic for a short while. And it's looking slow in Surrey on the M3 southbound from the M25 junction 2 towards Backshot, towards junction 3. If you're heading towards the Basingstoke direction, that's looking quite slow. Stratford's the A11 Leytonstone Road. That's been closed off from both directions between Maryland Station and Chobham Road. That was due to a crash. It's been closed on the Leytonstone side of Maryland Station. And it remains very slow on the A40. I'm looking at it right now on the cameras. This is High Holborn. That's from Chancery Lane Tube Station through to Holborn Tube Station. There was an accident much earlier this morning at the junction with Kingsway. It has been sorted, the actual accident, but it has left you with some residual delays though. Now, Chiswick, we have one lane blocked off with a broken down car. It's just before Sutton Court Road, just by the chemist there, and delays on the A20 Lewisham Way still from Lewisham Station towards the New Cross one-way system. You've got Florence Road closed off for works. That's the main reason for that hold-up. Now, for the trains, we still have disruption from Gatwick Airport to East Croydon. Now, we keep having the scheduled time sort of extended, as it were, extended now until around 11 o'clock, that disruption. That's affecting Southern, Thameslink and the Gatwick Express services. And the weekends for the trains, well, once again, no trains running to and from Euston, and the same for Fenchurch Street because of those major works. For the tubes, no Bakerloo line at all for the entire weekend, and we'll have part suspensions on the District, Hammersmith and City and Jubilee lines. Bill Sheldrake, BBC Radio London Travel. Next update at 10:30.
On digital radio, 94.9 FM and on BBC Sounds.
This is London.
This is BBC Radio London.
London's news at 10, I'm Matthew Schofield. It looks like voters have vented their anger at the Brexit deadlock after Labour and the Conservatives both suffered losses in the local council elections outside London. With fewer than half the results in, the Liberal Democrats, Greens and Independents have already gained more than 500 seats at the expense of the two main parties. The Tories have lost control of 16 councils and Labour 3, while the Lib Dems have won control of 9 to the delight of their MP for Kingston and Surbiton, Sir Ed Davey.
We're clearly backing the game, and what I think voters waking up to this will see is, frankly, a sea change in British politics. People have been frustrated with the appalling Tory government who've just let them down, not just on Brexit, but on cuts to the police and schools and so on, and a split opposition with such poor leadership. They've been crying out for a strong alternative.
Scientists say an end to the HIV pandemic could be in sight after they found effective treatment can prevent sexual transmission of the virus. Researchers tested nearly 1,000 gay male couples across Europe, one HIV positive and taking antiretroviral drugs, the other HIV negative, and found no cases of transmission over 8 years. India's most powerful storm for 5 years, Cyclone Foni, has made landfall with winds of more than 120 miles an hour. At least 2 people have been killed and 1 million have been evacuated from their homes in the eastern state of Orissa. Here, a fire station in Clerkenwell that closed 5 years ago has been brought back into use as the new home of the UK's first shelter for homeless LGBTQ people. City Hall says across London more than 22,000 commercial properties have been lying empty for at least 6 months, and the mayor's called on developers and businesses to follow his lead by using them to house rough sleepers. Harry Gay is a support worker at the new shelter. He's told Vanessa homeless LGBTQ people are especially vulnerable.
We hear stories of trans women being placed in men's shelters. There's a lot of abuse that goes on, a lot of prejudice. People have to hide their identities. People can't come out as gay or lesbian in those mainstream services. So we're basically a place where people can come, they're safe to be who they are, and that way we can support them and get them into sustainable housing as well.
Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill have led the tributes to the London-born actor who played Chewbacca in 5 Star Wars films. Peter Mayhew was 74. He grew up in Barnes, stood 7'3" tall, and was working as a nursing assistant when he was first cast in 1977. Ford, who played Han Solo, says he was a kind and gentle man, while Hamill, better known as Luke Skywalker, says he was a big man with an even bigger heart. Well, the film critic Peter Bradshaw says although he was always in costume and never spoke a word, he was loved by the fans, who also admired his big heart.
Everybody said that, and I think it's not just to be a question of inhabiting a costume. I think he really did give it his all, and he had a kind of identity of his own, of course, in fan conventions and Comic-Con conventions over the last 30, 40 years. He had a very real presence on his own account.
Now Elizabeth Rizzini has London's weather.
Feeling cooler today with plenty of cloud, lots of dry weather around, but there will be some showers through the late morning, just pushing in on a light northerly wind. Some of the showers heavy and even thundery in nature through the afternoon, but there will be some brighter spells in between. Top temperatures today between 12 and 14 degrees Celsius. Through this evening, the showers will move southwards and the skies will clear, maybe a touch of frost forming in northern home counties by tomorrow morning.
BBC Radio London, it's 3 minutes past 10.
On digital radio,
94.9 FM,
and on BBC Sounds.
This is London.
This is BBC Radio London.
Jason Solomons.
Oh yes. Good morning, everyone.